today I wanted to start with kind of an interesting tweet that is out right now, and that is Jonathan Alexander, who covers the Panthers for the Charlotte Observer, tweeted out today that the Panthers believe that Jimmy Garoppolo or Baker Mayfield will be the Panthers starting quarterback next season. And I guess, all the kind of the pieces are starting to come together. It sounds like Carolina might be the most viable landing spot for Jimmy Garoppolo. What do you think when you hear that?
Yeah, you think about it, and if you're the I think we have to look at it from a Panthers perspective. So Matt Rule, the head coach, he has swung and missed on essentially every quarterback decision they've made, from Darnold to
Right.
Teddy. And I mean, the list goes on and on. So now all we're hearing is that the Panthers are tied to Kenny Pickett, the guy who Rule recruited when he was supposed to go to Temple. That's not a person you want to go down. Like, that's not a person you're going to bet your career on, right? So with that in mind, that's why a guy like Baker, a guy like Jimmy does make sense. But again, I don't know if that's who I want on my last leg either, if it's Jimmy or Baker. So I guess they're in a rock and a hard spot. And when in doubt, bet on the veteran, bet on the guy that you've seen win. So I get the train of thought. With the 49ers, like, what are they willing to part ways with? And I guess if you're the Panthers, do you can get Jimmy for cheap because he's not in their future plans?
Well, it's really interesting because I don't see any way possible that the Panthers could have Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold or Jimmy Garoppolo and Sam Darnold. Darnold is guaranteed $18 million. If they trade him, they can get out from underneath it. But if they cut him, they got to pay him all $18 million. And right. Jimmy's making 25 plus, and Baker's making a lot of money too. It's not 25, but I think it's maybe 18, 19, something like that for Baker. So I don't think the question then is, what about Sam Darnold? And this is where this trade starts to become interesting, because Darnold is coming off a horrendous year. He's got an $18 million price tag. There is no team in the NFL that wants Sam Darnold on their roster this year at $18 million. I feel very confident in saying that. I'm sure you would agree.
Oh,
so I'm looking at this, Kyle, as an opportunity possibly for the 49ers to say, you take Jimmy Garoppolo, we'll take Sam Darnold and his $18 million guaranteed. We'll renegotiate that and give him a 3-year deal for $6 million a year. And now I've got Sudfeld and Sam Darnold as my backups combining to make 8. But the Niners aren't doing that for giggles. They're going to want something significant. The Panthers have the 6th pick in the draft. I'm not saying that they would do that trade for the 6th pick, but if the Niners said, here's Jimmy and the 2nd round pick, number 61, the 3rd round pick, number 93, we'll take back Sam Darnold, but we want that 6th pick in the draft. I start to think that might be a viable alternative if you're Carolina, because think about it. If you're Carolina and you're Matt Rule and you stay with Darnold, you're probably fired at the end of the year. But if you can somehow get Darnold off your roster, change quarterbacks midstream, you might be able to turn things around to the degree where you keep your job. So I know it sounds crazy to think that the 49ers could get a top 10 pick out of this, but if you're willing to throw a couple picks on top of it to sweeten the deal, I think that's a possibility. And to me, that would be very intriguing, because then the Niners could either take a top 10 pick, a Garrett Wilson or whatever player they want,
whoever they want,
Gardner, yeah. Or they could then start trading back for the Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett crowd who wants to trade up for a quarterback and maybe recoup some of the draft capital they lost in the original Trey Lance deal. What do you think?
Man, if John Lynch is able to flip Jimmy G for a top 10 pick, he is going to go down as executive of the year, no matter what happens. So because you said that, think about it. So Carolina doesn't have any other picks. So they go from pick number 6 to pick 137. So that is enticing for them. You throw out, all right, we know 6 is a lot, but here's 61. Like, here's the 95 pick. Here's 103 even, like whatever it takes. Because again, as you said, if you're from 6, you can go back to 15 now and then recoup probably what you lost in the trade. So if you can convince Carolina to do that, I don't know, 6 is pretty rich, but it's a quarterback. And if you don't win, you're not going to last. And Rule does not have any time. But man, missing out on the potential players that you could buy yourself some time, essentially, if you're Carolina, that would be why I would say no. Because again, if Jimmy fails out or if, say, Jimmy gets hurt, then what? So,
what do you think of Darnold?
I mean, every stop that he's been, even coming out of USC, people are like he's this raw athlete who has a giant arm. Then we go to the Jets, and then obviously he's bounced around a little bit here, but he's never been like the guy who's really taken a step forward. It seems like he's always been the same quarterback dating back to when he was with the Trojans. And I know he goes to Kyle Shanahan, and everybody's going to assume that he's going to get the bump, the Kyle Shanahan bump, because he gets wide receivers open. He does the hard work for you before the ball's even snapped. As a backup, yeah, that's what Sam Darnold is. So there's value in Sam Darnold as a backup. There's not value when Sam Darnold has to start, 10 plus games for you. So on that contract, assuming you're able to rework a deal, because he's going to understand, hey, we just moved up. We just traded multiple first round picks for a quarterback who we believe is our franchise and is our future. So knowing that, Darnold's going to probably be more willing to be on a winning roster because you convince him, hey, you rework this deal. Now you're Mitch Trubisky in a year or two because, you got the whole Shanahan bump. So you can spin it a lot of ways to make yourself look good no matter what if you're the 49ers. I would take Darnold as a backup, though, 100%. But again, at the same time, we don't know how he is like in the quarterback room. We don't know what his work ethic's like. So they would have to do a lot of homework in that sense to feel comfortable with acquiring Darnold.
Yeah, that's a great point, because if he doesn't fit your culture, none of this is worth it. But I do think that if I'm Sam Darnold, I'm willing to renegotiate my $18 million guaranteed for 1 year into a 3-year guarantee at $6 million per to get with Kyle Shanahan, to get with an iconic, team like the 49ers that's playoff bound, and to change the whole impression of what he is as a player. I think that what does Sam Darnold need right now? He needs Kyle Shanahan. He needs a great play caller, and he needs an organization where he's got weapons and some support. Just ask Steve Young what it's like to play in the NFL with no support and no weapons and not a good offense versus, being surrounded by talent and a good play caller and a good play sequencer. I mean, that's what he did, right? He was doing terrible in Tampa, and he was still talented, but he was doing terrible. And then somehow he gets traded to the 49ers, and he had a whole second career and wound up in Canton. I'm not saying that's going to wind up that's going to be Darnold's trajectory. But if I'm Sam Darnold, I bombed with the Jets. I bombed last year with Carolina. I mean, unless he's a total fool, he's got to know that his career is hanging in the balance and it's go time for him. So he either needs to play or he needs to sit in a very structured system with a really good quarterback friendly offense and a quarterback head coach. And I think the 49ers might be exactly what Sam Darnold probably would want. If I was him, I'd want to come here. I absolutely would.
He's 25. He'll be 25 by the time the season starts. Think about it. Mitch Trubisky upped his value by not playing. Geno Smith today got a $7 million for a year. He appeared in 3 games for Seattle last year. Teams get desperate. Teams are going to come calling for a quarterback because jobs are dependent on a quarterback. So knowing that even if, he's going to get a Shanahan bump, he could get a 49ers bump just because what happened with the Bills. We don't know what Trubisky was doing in practice. Nobody knows what Trubisky was doing in practice. But we saw Josh Allen, and we saw the Bills be so successful on offense and win and be in our face in the playoffs. If that's the 49ers, not Trubisky, but Darnold can get that bump. So, yeah, it'd be very intriguing for both sides. And I'd imagine Shanahan would love another toy to play with. And by that, I mean just having a quarterback who – last year, they were interested in Sam Darnold. Like that came up around this time last year. So it's not like he's not familiar with him or he's not interested in Darnold.
He might be able to turn Darnold's career around and then in the process add another asset that, you do trade him. I mean, you do turn him around and suddenly he's got a little momentum. Heck, you might be able to trade Sam Darnold in 2 or 3 years. You might be able to trade him for a 3rd or 4th round pick himself.